I staffed the fire lookout for one night. Something tried to talk me down. I wasn't supposed to be staffing the lookout that week. It was a favor, a gap in the schedule, a "can you just cover 2 nights until we get someone up there" kind of thing. I said yes because I've been saying yes to the park in some form for most of my adult life, and because the tower makes sense to me. The routine, the list, the way your road shrinks down to weather, visibility, and a radio that either works or doesn't. The lookout was technically decommissioned, which sounds dramatic until you realize it just means the budget moved on. The stairs were still solid, the catwalk still intact, the windows still swept clean enough to see smoke. The radio still had power if you fed the generator and kept the battery topped off. It was the kind of place you could pretend was abandoned while still being maintained, because nobody wanted to be the person who admitted they let it rot. I got up there around late afternoon with a pack, a thermos, and a clipboard. The sun was low enough that it turned the treetops copper. From the cab, you could see the whole backside of the park, ridgelines folding into each other, cut by long shadows and a few pale scars where lightning fires had burned years ago. The tower creaked in the wind, the way all towers do. Not dangerous creaking, just the sound of wood and metal remembering they're tall. Inside, everything smelled like dust, pine pitch, and old coffee. There was a laminated sheet tacked by the radios with 3 bullet points in bold. Do not request assistance over unmonitored frequencies. If you are lost, stay put. Use emergency phones or 911. If you hear a voice directing you off trail, do not respond. Somebody had underlined the last line twice, hard enough to emboss the plastic. I remember smirking at it when I first saw it. Not because it was funny, but because it was such a weird thing to have to write down. It felt like superstition in a workplace that runs on checklists. I did my first calling with dispatch. Gave them my location, weather read, and the fact I had a clear view of the southern ridge. They logged it, told me to call again at 2100, and that was that. The first few hours were quiet. I made coffee on a little camp stove. I filled out a logbook nobody reads unless something goes wrong. I watched the light fade. The forest below turned into one solid dark mass with only the service road cutting a faint line through it. The tower radio for the lookout was an old handheld unit plugged into a charging cradle by the window. Somebody had wrapped the antenna base with a band of electrical tape, and the casing had a crescent-shaped gouge on the bottom left corner, like it had been dropped on rock years ago and never repaired. The faceplate sticker was so sun-faded you could barely read it, but if you tilted it just right, you could make out the handwritten block letters, "Look out, 3. Around 2030, the radio squelched and popped in a way that made my shoulders lift automatically. You don't ignore that sound, not out there. "Look out, 3, dispatch," came the voice. "You copy?" I pressed the transmit. "Copy, go ahead." There was a pause, then dispatch again. "We got some weird traffic earlier. Not on our main, just letting you know in case you hear it." I glanced at the laminated sheet by the radio. "Define weird," I said. Dispatch sounded tired. Same operator I talked to 100 times. The kind who can sound calm even when there's a crash on the highway and someone screaming in the background. "Unmonitored channel. Someone calling for ranger assistance, using the word lookout." My stomach tightened a little. "Someone knows there's a tower up here." "Yeah," dispatch said. "Probably kids, or someone with an old radio. You're not to answer anything that isn't us. If you hear it, log it. That's all." I looked at the underlined line on the laminated sheet and felt my earlier smirk dry up. "Copy," I said. "I won't engage." I meant it. At 2100, I called dispatch with my update. Wind had picked up. Temperature dropping. Visibility still good. "Copy," dispatch said. "If you hear anything unusual, do not respond. Do not leave the tower. Rangers are already stretched thin." "Copy," I repeated. I remember looking at the stairs after that. The trapdoor that led down. The way the tower's shadow cut across a catwalk in the moonlight. I remember thinking, for no logical reason, that it would be easy to step out and go down and check the perimeter, just to prove to myself nothing was out there. I didn't do it. I locked the trapdoor like I always do in old structures, because it keeps the wind from rattling in. I set my flashlight beside the logbook. I sat in the chair by the window and listened to the tower creak. At 2217, the radio squelched again, but this time it wasn't dispatch. Not a call sign, not a proper prefix, just a soft click, then a voice, thin through static. "Ranger." I froze with my coffee halfway through my mouth. I didn't touch the transmit button. The voice came again, a little clearer. "Ranger, I need help." It sounded like a man trying to keep panic down, breathing too fast, words clipped, the kind of voice you hear right before people do something stupid. I stared at the radio like it was going to bite me. The laminated sheet was right there in my peripheral vision. The underlined warning felt like it was aimed directly at me. "Do not respond." I sat still. The voice on the unmonitored channel tried again. I'm on Trail 6, I think. I'm lost. I can't find the pull-off. Ranger Station, do you copy? Trail 6 was on the backside. It wasn't the busiest trail, but it wasn't obscure. People wandered on it all the time thinking it was easy. My thumb hovered over transmit, then stopped. I told myself I could call dispatch. That's the right move. Log it, let someone with authority decide if it's real. I picked up the handset for the main dispatch channel. Before I could key it, the unmonitored channel voice came again, lower now. I can hear you up there, it said. Please. My throat went dry. You could hear the tower, the generator hum, the wind. But hear you up there made it feel like there was a line between us that wasn't radio at all. I keyed dispatch. Dispatch, lookout 3. Go ahead, dispatch said immediately, alert now. I'm receiving traffic on an unmonitored frequency. Caller claims lost on Trail 6, says he can hear me up here. There was a pause, then dispatch again, quieter. Do not engage. We'll send a unit to check Trail 6 access points. Stay in the tower. Confirm you're secure. I'm secure, I said. Trapdoor locked. Copy, dispatch said. Do not leave. Do not respond. I set the handset down. On the unmonitored channel, the man's voice changed. It went flat for a second, like the emotion dropped out. Then it said, in my own voice, Lookout 3, dispatch. I felt my stomach drop in a way I haven't felt since I was a kid, and a car spun out on ice right in front of me. It wasn't a perfect recording quality. It was radio thin, but it was my cadence, my breath, the tiny throat clear I do without thinking before I speak. The radio clicked again, and my own voice repeated, Go ahead. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe right. The unmonitored channel kept going like it was practicing. My location, weather read. It was pulling phrases out of context, stitching them together like a puppet. I grabbed the lookout radio and turned the volume down until the speaker was barely audible. Not off. I couldn't bring myself to turn it off. All felt like it would be worse, like closing your eyes when you're sure something is still there. I wrote in the logbook with a shaking hand, 2217, unmonitored traffic, male voice, Trail 6, mimicked my call sign and dispatch phrasing. I underlined mimic twice, hard enough the pen tore the paper. The tower creaked. Outside the wind rose and fell. Then I heard something that wasn't radio at all. A knock. Not on the trapdoor, on the base of the tower far below. One heavy knock, metal on wood. I stood so fast the chair scraped. I leaned toward the floor hatch, listening. Another knock. Then faintly, a voice from below, carried up through the stairwell like someone standing at the bottom and shouting carefully, Ranger! My skin tightened. No one should have been down there. The access road is gated at night. There are signs. There are cameras, even if they're old. I moved to the window and looked down. The base of the tower was a black shape among darker trees. The moonlight didn't reach the ground well. I saw nothing. Then the voice came again, from directly below the tower, and it sounded like dispatch. Lookout 3, come down, we need you. My mouth went numb. Dispatch would never tell me to leave the tower at night for a lost camper without sending a unit. Dispatch would never use that tone, like it was urgent and casual at the same time. I reached for the main dispatch handset. Dispatch, lookout 3, I said, forcing my voice steady. Confirm you did not send anyone to tower base. Dispatch answered instantly, and there was something in the operator's voice I hadn't heard before. A tightness. Negative, dispatch said. No units at your location. Stay in the tower. Do not open the hatch. As she spoke, the voice from below overlapped her. Open the hatch. Same words, same rhythm. Not through the radio speaker, through the stairs. It was like the tower itself was relaying it. I backed away from the trapdoor until my shoulders hit the opposite wall. Dispatch kept talking, faster now. Listen to me. Do not respond to any voice that is not on this channel. Do not open the tower. Units are en route to the access road. Do you understand? I understand, I said, but my voice came out thin. Below, the knocking started again. Slow, patient. Knock, pause, knock, like it knew I was counting. The unmonitored radio channel hissed in the background, even with the volume low, and through it, I heard my own voice whispering, Please. I don't know what did it. I've replayed the next part 100 times, and I still can't point a single moment where my brain broke. It wasn't a sudden decision. It was like a series of tiny rationalizations stacking up until I couldn't see the drop-off anymore. Maybe someone really was down there. Maybe a hiker found the tower and was terrified. Maybe dispatch was wrong and a unit had already made it to the base. Maybe if I just cracked the hatch and called down, I could clear it up. Maybe the laminated sheet was for something else. Maybe I was being dramatic. I hate myself for the thought even now, but there was another thing too. The voice below sounded like my brother. My younger brother has been dead for 3 years. Car accident. Wrong place, wrong time, drunk driver. I hadn't heard his voice in a long time. not cleanly, not without memory blurring it. From below the tower, through the stairwell, came his voice, small like he was trying not to scare me.
Hey,
It said.
it's cold.
I felt my eyes sting. I stepped toward the hatch like a sleepwalker. Dispatch was still in my ear, but it sounded far away now, like a TV in another room. I unlocked the trapdoor. The second the lock turned, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic, it was just empty. I pulled the hatch up an inch and peered down into the stairwell. Blackness. A faint smell of damp wood and old rust. I didn't see anyone. I didn't hear breathing. Then, from halfway down the stairs, the radio crackle sound happened again, but it wasn't coming from the lookout radio. It was coming from the stairwell itself, like static in the air, and my brother's voice said softly,
Come on.
I opened the hatch fully. The cold air that came up was wrong. It wasn't just night air, it smelled sour, like wet fur and something metallic. I backed up, hand on my flashlight. Dispatch's voice sharpened.
Lookout 3, what are you doing? Confirm you are in the tower and the hatch is secured.
I lied. In the tower, I said. Hatch secured. The words tasted like pennies. I don't know why I lied. Maybe because part of me already knew I was about to do something I couldn't explain. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped down into the stairwell. The tower groaned as my weight shifted onto the stairs. Each step down felt like stepping to thicker air. The darkness pressed in tight around the flashlight beam, making it feel small and weak. The metal railing was cold under my hand. Halfway down, the beam caught something on a step. A strip of reflective tape. Part trail marker tape. It was stuck to the metal like someone had pressed it there. I stopped, my heart hammered. That tape shouldn't have been inside the tower. Nobody comes up here and starts peeling markers off trees to decorate. The voice from below didn't rush me. It just said, patient, almost there. I kept going. At the bottom, the tower's base platform was open to the air. From there you step onto the ground, onto packed dirt and needles. The flashlight beam swept across the base supports, the old maintenance box, the little post where the fire extinguisher used to hang. No person, no ranger truck, no fresh footprints. I stood at the base of the tower and felt the night pressing from all sides. Ranger? I called, and my voice sounded too loud. Nothing answered. Then the lookout radio, still up in the cab, crackled faintly through the structure, and in my own voice it said, here. The word came from the trees to my left too, at the exact same time. Here. Like two speakers playing the same track. My stomach dropped hard enough I almost gagged. I backed toward the tower stairs. The flashlight beam caught movement between two trunks. Not a full shape, just a shift. Something tall, adjusting its weight. I swung the light fully and saw it. It was upright, but it wasn't standing like a man. It looked assembled wrong. Too thin, too long, arms hanging low with too many joints. The head was not antlers, not a clean skull like you see in cheap horror. It was like skin pulled tight over something sharp, ridges under the surface, a mouth that didn't sit right on the face, stretched farther than it should be. The worst part was the eyes. Not glowing, not bright, dull, wet reflections in the flashlight beam like stones at the bottom of a creek. It didn't charge. It stepped forward once, quiet and confident, closing distance in a way my brain couldn't map properly. I turned and ran. I hit the stairs and took them two at a time, boots clanging on metal. My hands shook so hard I nearly missed the railing. Behind me, something moved through bush without crashing. It sounded like it knew exactly where to place its weight. I got 5 steps up before a sound, like a dry throat clicking, came from right below the tower, closer than it should have been. I looked down without meaning to. It was on the first landing already, climbing without haste, long limbs folding wrong. My flashlight beam caught his hand on the rail, hands like bundled sticks, fingers too long, too many joints, gripping like clamps. I bolted up again, lungs burning. The tower creaked in protest, like it hated being part of this. I hit the trapdoor platform and shoved the hatch up, scrambling through. My shoulder slammed the frame, pain shot down my arm, but I didn't care. I got one knee into the cab and reached back to slam the hatch. And something caught me. Not a grip, a swipe. A fast, cold rake across my back through my shirt, like dragging a handful of bent nails from shoulder blade to ribs. The pain didn't even register right away. It was heat and shock and a breath that turned into a noise I didn't even recognize as mine. I fell forward into the cab, slammed my palms on the floor and kicked back hard. The hatch dropped, wood thudded into place. Then the burning hit full force. I scrambled upright and fumbled for the lock. It didn't align. My hands were shaking too much. Below me the hatch bumped once, gently, as if something had tested it. Then again. I shoved my weight onto it, and finally got the lock to catch with a metallic click. I pressed my back against the far wall of the cab, and felt wetness spreading under my shirt. The scratches stung with every breath, each inhale pulling at torn fabric and skin like the injury wanted to remind me it was there. Dispatch was still on my actual channel, voice edged with panic now. Lookout 3, respond. Respond now. Under my feet, another voice repeated her exact words a half second later, using her tone so well it made my teeth ache. I forced myself to key dispatch. It's at the tower, I said, words coming out in ragged pieces. It mimics. It got into the stairwell. My voice hitched when my back spasmed. Dispatch didn't waste time asking what it was. Stay away from the hatch. Barricade it if you can. Units are 2 minutes out. The hatch bumped again, harder. A sound like claws or nails dragging along the wood. My stomach rolled. My back was on fire. I could taste copper at the back of my throat from biting down too hard. I grabbed a heavy chair and shoved it over the hatch. Then I grabbed a small table and jammed it against the chair. The tower shook slightly, and for the first time, I realized the thing wasn't just testing the hatch. It was putting weight on the tower, like it was climbing the supports. The windows rattled. The catwalk outside the cab gave a soft metallic ping as something stepped onto it. The flashlight beam caught a shadow pass over the window. Tall, too thin. I backed away until it hit the far wall of the cab, my back screaming, and I nearly blacked out from the sudden flare of pain. The radio shrieked with static, not dispatched, the other channel. And then, in my own voice, right in the speaker by my ear, it said softly, "Come down." The window behind me thudded once, like something tapped it with a knuckle. Then again, harder. I saw the outline press against the glass for a split second. Not a face, not clear, just a suggestion of that stretched mouth and rigid head. The glass bowed. It didn't break, but it flexed enough to make me realize how old it was, how many winters it had seen, how many times it had been heated and cooled and stressed. The thing outside didn't rush. It didn't slam wildly. It tapped, then waited, then tapped again, like it knew time was on its side. Dispatch was still talking, telling me to hold, to stay put. The headlights were on the access road, that they were almost there. I believed her. And then the voice on the other side of the glass said, in my brother's voice again, small and cold,
I'm scared.
That almost got me, I won't lie. My hand moved toward the hatch without permission, a reflex built from a lifetime of responding to voices asking for help. I stopped myself by biting down on the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. The tapping on the window stopped. For a few seconds, the tower was still, except for my breathing and the faint crackle of radios and the slow drip of something warm down my side under my shirt. Then, something scraped across the roof, slow, like fingernails being dragged along metal. The sound traveled from one end of the roof to the other, then stopped above my head. I looked up without meaning to. The ceiling was thin paneling. If something heavy sat on it, the whole cab would feel it. The tower creaked, a deep groan, like it was taking a breath. And then the hatch behind my barricade bumped from below again. It was on the roof and under the floor, or it wanted me to think it was. Then, headlights washed the trees below in white beams, sweeping back and forth. A ranger truck. Another. Radios on the dispatch channel erupted with voices, call signs, orders, real human urgency. The scraping on the roof stopped immediately. The tapping stopped. The pressure under the hatch eased. For one shaky breath, I thought it was over. That it would retreat when there were more people. Then over the unmonitored channel, in dispatch's exact voice, came a calm instruction. Units, proceed off-road. Follow the voice. I heard a ranger on the main channel hesitate. Dispatch, confirm. Dispatch snapped, real and sharp. Negative. Stay on the road. Do not go off-road. Do not follow any voice. And then, like it was enjoying itself, the unmonitored channel repeated her denial in her voice, but with a tiny twist, like a smile hidden in it. Proceed. Below, one of the trucks turned its lights toward the tree line, and for a brief second, I saw the shape at the edge of the beams. Tall, too thin, half hidden like it didn't want to be fully seen. Then it stepped back into the woods and the darkness swallowed it. The rangers stayed on the road. They didn't chase. They didn't play hero. They swept the area, found nothing, and told me to stay in the cab until morning. When daylight came, they walked me down the tower with 2 people on either side like I was a fragile one. Halfway down, my shirt had dried stiff against my back. Every step made the scratches flare again, like the air cell was cutting me. At the base, one of the rangers said, "You hit something?" I shook my head once, because I didn't know how to answer without sounding like a lunatic. At the park office later, I tried to explain what happened in a way that didn't make me sound like I'd lost my mind in the dark. I talked about radio interference, about prank calls, about an animal under the tower. The older clerk behind the counter didn't laugh. She slid a binder toward me, opened to a page that looked like it had been read too many times. Incident reports, dates, channels, notes about mimicry and unmonitored frequencies. At the bottom of the page was a line, underlined twice. If it uses your voice, it already has you. They sent me to urgent care in town anyway, the way they do when paperwork starts to smell like liability. The nurse didn't ask many questions. She just had me turn around, lifted my shirt carefully, and went quiet for a second. "You got lucky," she said. They cleaned the scratches, bandaged them in long strips, and told me to watch for infection. The back of my shirt went into a plastic bag like evidence. I drove home with my shoulders tight, trying not to move too much because every shift tugged at the raw lines under the gauze. I quit volunteering the next week, not out of fear of the woods in general. I can walk a trail in daylight and enjoy like anyone. I quit because I learned something I can't unlearn. There are rules out there that aren't about bears or weather or dehydration. There are rules about what happens when you ask for help the wrong way, on the wrong channel, in the wrong place. And there's one more detail I haven't told anyone in the park system because I don't want to see the look on their faces. Sometime after midnight, a couple nights later, I finally fell asleep in my own bed. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. exactly. Not the slow drift up from a dream, the kind where your eyes open and your body is already tight, like it heard something before your brain caught up. My back ached under the bandages. I could feel the scab line pulling every time I breathed too deep. The apartment was quiet. No cars, no neighbors. The heater clicked once and stopped. Then I heard it, not from outside, from inside the room. A soft burst of static, like a speaker waking up. A click. My throat closed. I sat up so fast a sheet tangled around my legs. The sound came again, clearer now. Static, then a tiny controlled squelch, like someone had keyed a mic and let go. It wasn't my phone. My phone was on the dresser, dark and charging. I swung my bedside lamp on. The light filled the room, bright and normal, and for half a second my brain tried to calm down, tried to tell me it was nothing. Then I saw a green glow. A faint, sick little rectangle of light coming from the crack under my bedroom door. My heart started banging hard enough to make my vision pulse. I got out of bed and limped to the door, barefoot, quiet, holding my breath like it mattered. I opened it. The hallway was lit only by the kitchen nightlight. The glow on the floor wasn't from that. It was coming from my living room. I stepped out and followed it, slow, like approaching a trap you can already see. On my coffee table, centered like someone had placed it carefully, was a tower radio from the lookout. I knew it instantly, not because of the model, but because I could see the black electrical tape wrapped around the antenna base, and the crescent-shaped gouge on the bottom left corner of the casing. The one I noticed because it made the radio sit crooked in its cradle up in the cab. The faceplate sticker was still sun-faded, but in the lamplight, I could make out the handwritten block letters if I leaned close enough. Lookout 3. And taped to the side of it, pressed flat, neat as a label, was a strip of reflective trail marker tape. I didn't touch it. I just stood there, staring at the radio like it was a live animal. The speaker crackled again. Click. Then my own voice came out of it, patient and calm, the way I sound when I'm trying to keep somebody else from panicking. "Lookout 3. Do you copy?" I backed up until my shoulders hit the wall, and the movement tugged at my bandages hard enough to make me hiss. The radio clicked again, and this time it didn't use my voice. It used dispatch. Sharp, official, convincing. "Confirm you are secure." I stood there in the hallway, barefoot, shaking, staring at a radio that didn't belong in my apartment, and I realized something that made my stomach turn cold. It wasn't just copying voices. It wasn't just playing with the frequency. It knew where the tower was. It knew where I lived. And it knew exactly what words would make me answer. I didn't answer. I didn't even breathe right. I walked backward into my bedroom and shut the door and locked it like that meant anything. The radio kept talking out in my living room, voice changing every few seconds. Mine, dispatch, my brother, cycling through the ones that worked best. I stayed in my room until sunrise, listening to it through the wall like you listen to an intruder moving around your house. At 6:41 a.m., it went quiet. No static, no click, just silence. When I finally opened my door, the radio was gone. There was no mark on the table, no tape, no dust disturbed, no sign it had ever been there. Except for one thing. On the hardwood in front of my coffee table, right where the green glow had pulled, was a single strip of reflective tape pressed flat to the floor like a breadcrumb, pointing toward my front door.